Wild Bill Hickok. He was a legend both during his lifetime and afterward. However, there are several intriguing mysteries that surround his true story. How many men did Hickok really kill in gun battles? Was he really as good with his twin revolvers as the legend says he was? Did deteriorating eyesight contribute to the disaster of his final gunfight in 1871 in Abilene, Kansas? Did Hickok have to marry for money near the end of his life out of financial necessity? Did he father a child with Calamity Jane, as she claims that he did? And what joke was played on him 27 years after his death? Hickok's life was marked by violence, tragedy, hardship, and increasing danger. He developed a high level of skill with firearms at an early age. He became an American frontiersman, Army scout, Indian fighter, gambler, and lawman. Often outnumbered, Hickok was known for single-handedly quelling mobs and intimidating bullies, sometimes killing them. You know, modern historians like to downplay Hickok's abilities and experiences. Seems like they want to kill all of our heroes. But when you look at the record of his gunfights, you know, he was in at least a half dozen gunfights. In those, he killed 6 or 7 men for sure. We're talking about civilian gunfights. That doesn't count any action he saw in the Civil War. And he's known to have killed at least 2 Indians in a skirmish. So Hickok was the real deal. He was involved in a lot of hand-to-hand gunfighting in the Old West. So was Hickok really as good with his revolvers as the legend said he was? Well, it's a fact that he killed at least 3 men in gunfights with a single shot to either the head or the heart, and in one case at great distance. He also did impromptu shooting shows where he would kick a can down the street, something called can rolling, with each of his revolvers. He did that on many occasions. So there's no doubt he was very, very good with revolvers. James Butler Hickok was born on May 27, 1837 in Homer, Illinois. His family's small farm served as a stop on the Underground Railroad. Hickok left home at age 17 and worked as a canal boat pilot in Utica, Illinois, before heading west in 1856 to what became known as Bleeding Kansas, which was embroiled in a violent conflict over whether slavery should be permitted there. During this period, Hickok prevented a man from beating an 11-year-old boy, who grew up to become Buffalo Bill Cody and Hickok's longtime friend. In 1858, he became a teamster driving freight wagons for Russell, Majors, and Waddell, the creators of the Pony Express. It was while working there that Hickok unexpectedly was plunged into his first one-on-one fight to the death, but it wasn't against a man, but against a sow bear with cubs that his pistols were useless against. What happened was that the freight wagon came upon the bear blocking the road. Hickok dismounted the wagon and approached the bear, thinking it would frighten away, but instead, the bear charged. Hickok's revolver bullets did little damage, but instead enraged the bear, and she was on top of him in an instant, and he found himself on the ground in deadly combat with the animal. Hickok managed to stab or slash its throat and killed the bear, but not before receiving serious wounds. This encounter, killing the bear, would become part of the lore surrounding him. When the battle was over, his chest was crushed and his arm severely damaged. Hickok was bedridden for months, but then he went to southern Nebraska in the summer of 1861 to work at the Pony Express station at Rock Creek. It was at Rock Creek Station, Nebraska, that Hickok probably killed his first man. The conflict was what became known as the McCandless Massacre, July 12, 1861. David McCandless was known as a local bully, and he was a rancher. He often ridiculed Hickok by calling him Duck Bill. McCandless owned the property at Rock Creek Station and leased it to Horace Wellman, who ran the station, and Hickok worked there. McCandless, along with his young son and two friends by the names of James Woods and James Gordon, came to the station to collect an overdue debt on the property. However, profanities were exchanged, which resulted in gunfire. McCandless was killed, and James Woods and James Gordon were seriously wounded and later died of their wounds. The details are contested by different witnesses, as they often are in deadly encounters. Hickok, Wellman, and Wellman's wife took part in the killings. Hickok, Wellman, and another employee at the station were tried for murder, but they were found to have acted in self-defense. During the Civil War, Hickok was a teamster for the Union Army, and later a wagon master, spy, scout, and a sharpshooter. After the war, July 21, 1865, in a shootout in Springfield, Missouri, Hickok killed Davis Tutt. The two had been at odds over a gambling debt Hickok couldn't cover, so Tutt took Hickok's pocket watch as collateral. Hickok warned Tutt not to wear the watch in public. Tutt called Hickok's bluff by defying him, and Hickok made good on the warning with a shot through Tutt's heart at a later paced off 70 yards. It was the first fast-draw duel in the Old West, with Tutt getting the first shot off but missing, and Hickok's single shot hitting its mark. For the second time in his life, he was arrested for murder. A jury acquitted him yet again on the grounds of self-defense. Later, Hickok returned to the Army, where he was lanced in the foot during a skirmish with an Indian in eastern Colorado. Returning to Kansas, he became sheriff of Hays City, Kansas in 1869. On August 24, 1869, he shot and killed a man named Bill Mulvey. Bill Mulvey was a notorious murderer from Missouri. On this particular day, a drunken Mulvey was riding his horse through town, taking pot shots at all manner of glass targets. A man shouted a warning to Mulvey that Hickok was sheriff now and that he had better knock it off, to which Mulvey shouted back that he would shoot Hickok dead on sight, and that was the very reason he had come to town. Just as that information reached Hickok, Mulvey arrived on his horse, moving towards Hickok and drawing a bead on him from the saddle. Hickok stepped out onto the street to meet him and looked and waved to someone behind Mulvey and shouted, "Don't shoot him in the back, he's drunk." Mulvey stopped his horse and wheeled the animal about, drew a bead on his rifle in the direction of the imaginary man he thought Wild Bill was addressing. By the time Mulvey realized the ruse, Hickok had him in his pistol sights and fired one time. The shot went through Mulvey's temple and dropped him from his horse and solved all of his problems forever. Just a month later, on September 27, 1869, a cowboy ruffian named Sam Strahan and his cohorts were tearing up John Bitter's beer saloon. Hickok and his deputy arrived on the scene, and Hickok ordered an end to the riot. Strahan turned on Hickok in an attack, and Hickok drilled him right through the head. Both Strahan and the riot immediately died. The following July, Hickok nearly met his end when he was gang attacked by 7th Cavalry troopers in a saloon. Jeremiah Lonergan and John Kyle ambushed Hickok, intent on killing him. Lonergan pinned Hickok to the floor, and Kyle put a gun to Hickok's ear. When Kyle's weapon misfired, Hickok shot Lonergan, wounding him in the knee, and shot Kyle twice, killing him. In April 1871, Hickok became Marshal of Abilene, Kansas. By summer that year, a rivalry between Hickok and a man named Phil Coe was brewing. Both men were courting the same woman, and Coe hated Hickok for other reasons as well. Rumors had circulated that each planned to kill the other. Phil Coe was on one famous occasion attempting to intimidate Hickok by bragging that he could kill a crow on the wing. Hickok's response was, "Did the crow have a pistol? Was he shooting back? I will be." Hickok made good on his promise when the situation called for it on October 5, 1871. Hickok was standing off a crowd during a street brawl when Coe fired 2 shots nearby. Hickok arrived at Coe's proximity and ordered him to be arrested for firing a pistol within the city limits. Coe claimed that he was shooting at a stray dog, and then suddenly turned his gun on Hickok and fired. Hickok returned fire and shot Coe twice in the stomach. Suddenly, Hickok heard footsteps coming up behind him and turned swiftly. He fired again and accidentally killed his own deputy, Mike Williams. Coe died 3 days later. Abilene had had enough. The city fathers told the Texans there could be no more cattle drives through their town and dismissed Hickok as city marshal. This was Bill Hickok's last gunfight, and it haunted him for the rest of his life. So, did deteriorating eyesight contribute to the tragic outcome of that last shooting he was in 1871? It is generally believed that Hickok's eyesight was beginning to fail by the time of that gunfight in Abilene with Phil Coe. Between 1871 and early 1876, when Hickok sought treatment from an eye specialist in Kansas City, several people that knew him report that he had trouble with his eyes and vision. No medical report exists of his diagnosis, but speculation is that he may have developed ophthalmia or perhaps glaucoma, leading to gradual vision loss. For a time, Hickok tried show business as a means to support himself. His own venture failed miserably in 1872, but then he joined William F. Cody's show, Scouts of the Prairies. And for a while, Hickok made a decent income and was able to indulge in his love for women and gambling. But he did not enjoy being on stage, and the bright lights bothered his eyes. He began to drink a lot more, and his acting became even worse. And finally, in March of 1874, he said goodbye to Cody and headed back out west. Hickok's health and abilities deteriorated significantly in the last few years of his life. His drinking increased even more, and his gambling skills had deteriorated so much that he was arrested for vagrancy several times. On March 5, 1876, Hickok married an older woman, Agnes Lake Thatcher, who had been chasing him around the country for years, and patiently waiting for him to tire of his long string of female companions. They married in Cheyenne, Wyoming territory and honeymooned in Cincinnati, Ohio. Hickok left his new bride a few months later, joining Charlie Utter's wagon train to seek his fortune in the goldfields of South Dakota. It was on the way to South Dakota that he likely met Calamity Jane for the first time. Bill Hickok was in Deadwood for only a few weeks, 3 or 4 at the most, before he was murdered. In Deadwood, Hickok tried vainly to resume a gambling career, but no longer possessed the requisite skills. In fact, he could barely keep himself suited and situated to hold on to the reputation and the illusion. He was seldom sober and was repeatedly arrested for vagrancy. He seemed to have premonitions of his impending death. Several people later stated that he told them that he thought he would be killed while in Deadwood. And in a last letter to his wife, he wrote in part, "If such should be we never meet again, while firing my last shot, I will gently breathe the name of my wife, Agnes, and with wishes even for my enemies, I will make the plunge and try to swim to the other shore." On August 1st, 1876, he was playing poker at Nutter and Mann's Saloon No. 10 in Deadwood. When a seat opened up at the table, a drunk man named Jack McCall sat down to play. McCall lost heavily. Hickok encouraged McCall to quit the game until he could cover his losses, and even offered to give him money for breakfast. Although McCall accepted the money, he apparently was insulted. The next day, August 2nd, 1876, Hickok was playing poker again. He usually sat with his back to the wall so he could see the entrance, but the only seat available when he joined the game was a chair facing away from the door. He twice asked another man at the table, Charlie Rich, to change seats with him, but Rich refused. McCall then entered the saloon, walked up behind Hickok, drew his revolver, and shouted, "Damn you, take that!" before shooting Hickok in the back of the head at point-blank range. Hickok died instantly. The bullet emerged through his right cheek and struck another player, riverboat captain Mike Massey, in the left wrist. Did Hickok really father a child with Calamity Jane? And what joke was played on him 27 years after his death? Well, the original claimed that he fathered a child with Martha Jane Canary. is a claim that arises solely from Jane herself and is disputed by people that knew them both. Reports from the time indicate that Jane claimed to love Hickok, but that he did not return her affections nor have any use for her whatsoever. In the last year of her life, she traveled back to Deadwood and died broke on August 1st, 1903. 4 of the men who planned her funeral later stated that Hickok had absolutely no use for her when he was alive, so they decided to play a posthumous joke on him by burying her by his side 27 years after his death. Wild Bill Hickok was one of the most interesting people from the Old West. You know, the Hollywood Western movie hero that we're all familiar with, there's been many different people that played that fictional character. Wild Bill Hickok really was that guy. You know, he was involved in a bunch of gunfights. He had to kill people for real. He wore revolvers every day of his adult life to defend himself. He had strangers that showed up to kill him for no reason, just to claim that they did it. He knew that whoever did kill him would be famous. His story really plays out like a fictional Old West story, and that's why I think he's one of the most interesting characters. And as well as the fact that he's known for sticking up for people that were being picked on and bullied. He's also known for standing up to bullies, oftentimes outnumbered. So I think his story is one of the most interesting in all the Old West. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, share it, and watch the next one. I'll see you there.